Hello, hello, hello. How are you doing? Hope your day has been awesome. We are going to be having a wonderful, informative chat with Jemma from, oh gosh, it's been one of those days. I hope your day is going well. We're going to be chatting with Jemma on from strollers to stilettos. The stilettos to strollers. That's what happens when you do a live late in the evening. You forget stuff and you get all your words muddled up. But I hope all has been well. Hello. How are you doing? How's your day been? Oh, there she is. Okay, I'm just going live. So this is such an interesting topic for me because it is one that is new to my motherhood journey. Hey, Jemma.
Hello, how are you doing?
I am very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Settled with my cup of tea,
Oh,
relaxing finally.
listen, you don't look like you've had a rushed day. You look really nice and refreshed, and that tea is doing you good.
Oh, right back at you. You don't look like your day has been as
Oh,
hectic either. Always is though, isn't it?
honestly, it is indeed. I'm super excited to chat with you today. Thank you for agreeing to come on our live and inform us about surviving the fourth trimester. Now, I have to confess that the term fourth trimester is relatively new to me because although I have four sons and my oldest is 23,
Yeah.
I can't believe it. That was not a term that was ever used when I was having babies. I only heard about it in very, very recent times. So before we go into all of that, I just want to warn everyone listening that I'm going to sound like a total novice, which is why we have Gemma here. She's great at explaining. She's going to really break it down for us and not just what it is, but how to survive it. So Gemma, can we start by you telling us about yourself and how your work impacts mothers?
Of course. So, I am a birth and postnatal doula, and also antenatal teacher as well. So I work with families throughout their pregnancy,
Mhm.
to help them prepare for birth, and then I
Mhm.
support a select number of families during their birth as well, and then also support mothers after they've had their baby. Um, the way that I work with families is very unique to each family and what they need. Um, but one thing I am really passionate about is the fourth trimester and helping mothers to prepare for that. Unfortunately, postnatal depression is rife, and so many people don't recognize what the signs and symptoms are, and they're also unprepared for actually becoming mothers, to these tiny little things that need so much doing for them. So I'm also very keen on, when I do work with people in their pregnancy, making sure they're prepared for what's going to come after that birth, not just thinking about getting the baby out, but also how they themselves and the baby are going to cope afterwards.
That's really interesting. So it's interesting because so even though obviously, like they say, every pregnancy is different. So presumably every post-pregnancy, every fourth trimester is different, which is what makes you tailor your services to individual families. Is that correct?
Yeah, and different families want and need different things as well.
Mm.
It can sometimes be a case of birth not going as you planned it. So they,
Mhm.
for your fourth trimester, is different. If you are planning a vaginal birth, for example, and you end up having a cesarean birth, your
Yes,
recovery is going to be very different,
that's true.
from that. So it's not quite the same. But it's actually, understanding what that fourth trimester is. So your fourth trimester is the first 12 weeks after you've had your baby. So from the moment your baby is born until your baby is 3 months old is considered your fourth trimester.
Right.
Um, we often think of pregnancy as those first 3 trimesters, and then it's, you've had your baby, now you go back to normal life, which just isn't the case at all, because there is so much to learn about this new person, and also you're really recovering from what you've just been through. And so to understand how you can work with your baby and how you can work with your body and make the best out of it for both of you, is something that you need to consider and look into. It kind of doesn't all just magically happen, unfortunately.
I hear you. Absolutely. And so what makes it particularly, let me go back a little bit. When did they start calling it the fourth trimester? Because I'd never heard that before.
Um, as long as I've known about it, it's always been the
Really?
fourth trimester. I think it's more about the fact that, you know, people are talking about it.
Yeah.
You know, I just think we're talking about more of this stuff across all of, you know, women's health.
Women, yeah. Menopause
Menopause,
at one
for
end.
example,
Yeah,
being
you're
talked
right.
about
That's
so
true.
much more. Girls starting their periods is being talked about so much more.
Yes, that's
Women
true.
sharing details of their pregnancy and birth is out there
Mm.
so much more thanks to social media. There's
Yeah.
so many things, and you know that postnatal period really is very cloak and dagger. There's so
Mm.
much about it that nobody tells you about until you have a
Mm.
baby, and then you know you comment someone, God, like I'm sweating at night
Mm.
ridiculously. I think I might be ill. And someone goes, oh no, that always happens after you have a baby. Nobody tells you that
No one
beforehand,
says that. You're
unless
right.
you know you've actually done the research to look into it or spoken to somebody that's willing to share that information with you. And
Mm.
that can be quite scary if things are happening to your body and to you that you didn't expect.
That's right. I'm considering the fact that everyone's different. So even if you do share or you get someone who you can be open with and they can tell you their experiences, like I had a few friends who were pregnant at the same time that I was. And so my knowledge, besides the books, wonderful books on antenatal care and postnatal care, besides
Yeah.
those books and besides the magazines that showcased some women who shared openly their experiences, I had a very limited pool of knowledge about what was to happen after birth. And naively, I had my son. Things didn't even go according to plan. So you've already mentioned that. So I had a
Yeah.
very normal, healthy pregnancy and then ended up needing an emergency cesarean. So I was not prepared for that, for starters. Uh, and I went for every antenatal class, and I know they did say it could happen, but you know, you kind of think that you would know ahead of time.
Yeah.
So caring for myself after my baby boy was born, that now went in a totally different direction because I didn't take into consideration, you know, the wound, and I didn't take into consideration the fact that I couldn't lift a weight or a load heavier than my baby, and all of the advice that they
Can't
gave.
drive.
Yeah, can't drive and all of that. So I think it's wonderful that you help to make that space of having a baby or just having had a baby, you help to make it not just bearable, but you help moms to thrive in that space. And your services are clearly very needed. I wish I had you when I had my boys. Yeah. Why is the fourth trimester so hard?
A lot about the fourth trimester that is making it difficult for people at the moment is, you know, it's not hard per se in because of what's happening.
Mm.
It is, you know, there's some cultures that are the fourth trimester, a woman is completely bundled up and taken care of by her
Yeah.
relative. In Eastern
Mhm.
cultures, it's still that almost confinement that you're in your house or your friends and neighbors bring you food.
Mhm.
Your relatives will come and do your washing for you. You are not expected to leave that room with your baby for weeks and weeks and weeks.
Mm.
Unfortunately, we've got into a, you know, it's a cultural norm now that it's almost a badge of honor of, I was in the Ivy having dinner 2 days after my baby was
Yeah,
born.
you're right. That's
And
true.
you know, I was back in my pre-pregnancy jeans, I was
Oh,
wearing the
that's the
most stilettos,
worst.
I was doing this as if it's a
Yeah.
good thing that we're doing it. And you know,
Mm.
hands up, I was exactly the same when I had my first baby. You know, I was
Mm.
proud. I was at a family dinner, you know, less than 48 hours after giving birth, and I look back and just want to hug that girl and go, what the hell are you doing? Go home and go to bed.
Yeah.
Um, and you know, it is understanding the benefits of taking it slow.
Yeah.
Benefits for you and your baby, and a lot about that actually comes from, and I might be slightly jumping ahead here, is understanding newborn behaviour and what
Mm.
to expect from that newborn baby. Because if you understand what a newborn is going to be like, then you get to grips with why you might want to view your fourth trimester in a different way.
Mm. I understand that. That makes perfect sense. And I hear you on the culture as well, because I'm Nigerian, and in our culture, traditionally, the first 40 days after birth are sacred. You do not take the baby out, and literally everyone does come to pamper you and look
Yeah.
after you. And
So
It is. So it's only when you've been exposed to a different culture, like the English culture of going out straight afterwards and all of that stuff, then you realize, hold on a second, that's actually a privilege that we have to be able to have that as still very much in our culture.
Yeah.
So what techniques can you suggest to moms? I know that everyone's different and every pregnancy is different, every birth is different, but are there techniques that you can suggest that will help new moms from feeling overwhelmed? Because overwhelm is one of the feelings, and my overwhelm came in the form of just I remember the first night I got home. So I had an emergency C-section and wonderful doctors, wonderful care in the hospital, and they said, listen, you go home when you're ready, you don't go home before, so you just stay as long as you want to. So I think I may have spent about 5 days or so in hospital. And then but I had this crazy fear that someone was going to steal my baby. So
Oh, really?
I did. So I barely slept. Like I could not. I would only sleep when my husband came to see us, and while he was there, I'd sleep. But I couldn't sleep at night. I watched way too many movies where these things happened, and so I thought it was reality. So I remember the first night back home after I'd had my baby, I fell asleep and fell asleep so deeply that I could hear this screeching sound, and I just didn't know what it was. And my husband was on the computer in the room, and he said he had exactly the same, like, what is that noise? And it was the baby crying. Like we'd almost forgotten we'd had a baby. So
Yeah.
so
So
what
tired, probably.
oh, it's tiring. You're so tired, you feel like you're in another zone. But there is the adrenaline of meeting your newborn. Then there is the uncertainty of how do I raise this child? And then there is, if depending on the sort of family and support you have, sometimes support can be a bit too much and too overwhelming. So how can moms deal with the overwhelm in the fourth trimester?
Number one thing is plan for it. So, we talk about birth plans and planning for your birth. Planning for your fourth trimester is so important. Think about what you want, what you need, and set your boundaries as well is a really, really key one. There were very few positives of COVID, but one of them was that new mothers were left alone because people couldn't go around and visit it. There's not official statistics on it, but through hearsay, we know that the success of breastfeeding of women that had babies during COVID is much higher because they were just spending time with their baby cuddled up on the sofa, skin on skin. They're not getting them dressed and passing them around and great grandma so and so's there for 3 hours and all of that kind of stuff. So actually setting boundaries and letting people know what you expect and what you want your fourth trimester to be like is really, really helpful. Also, so when I talk about planning, I mean physically, one thing that I offer is an actual template of a plan to sit and write, and have a list of all the people that you're going to need. If you are planning on breastfeeding, make sure you've got a lactation consultant numbers written down so you're not googling it at 4 o'clock in the morning. Make sure that you have said to all your friends, do you know what, as beautiful as all those baby grows are, what would be really beneficial in the first couple of weeks is if you just bring me a meal and some snacks and things like that. Let people know what you want from them and prepare them that you might not be taking the baby out, introducing the baby around those first couple of weeks because you're going to be concentrating on getting to know them a bit.
Okay, I love those tips, definitely. So you don't wait until baby arrives and then you start planning. You plan before the baby comes. And really, so in many ways, it's part of your birth plan. So you have your birth plan, and then you have your after birth plan, if you like, or your fourth trimester plan.
Yeah, exactly that. And, quite often we hear stories about births all the time as well. And often they're the more negative stories. Just again, it's a cultural thing that women that have had more difficult births tend to be more open about it. As somebody that's had 3, quite pleasant births, you do kind of feel British about it sometimes. You don't want to go, oh, actually, I quite enjoyed it. It was quite nice, because people think you're crazy. And the same with the fourth trimester. People just don't really talk about it unless they've had a really hard experience. Actually, you know what? I said, as much as I love you guys, I don't want anyone visiting me for the first week. I want to, you know,
Yeah.
not have to feel like I've got to get dressed or put makeup on. Or
Yeah.
my rule of thumb that I always say to everyone is it should be a week in bed and a week on the sofa.
Oh, I love that. I feel like I
After
need
you've
that
had
now. That's a
and
good one.
it makes such a difference. And if you're in bed, people either, you know, if it's not appropriate for them to sit on the corner of your bed while you're there, you know, feeding your baby and in your nightdress and things, then they won't expect to visit you. Also, if people are visiting you and, you know, they're coming into your bedroom to visit you, you tend to find they're not going to be hanging around for 3 hours as well. It's more of a, you know, pop in, say hi, give you a little something and have a quick chat and a cup of tea maybe, and then leave.
That's right. But it's funny because I feel as if, and I feel like I might be digressing a little bit here. I feel like those sort of boundaries are boundaries that you should sort of build into your life anyway, really from as early as possible. Because I know I call myself a recovered people pleaser. I know that if I had heard this advice when I had my babies, I would not have had the gall to say to anyone at all, please don't come see me until after the first week or second week or anything like that. But now I'm much older. I understand that boundaries are based on how, basically, you have to inform people on how you want them to treat you. So you start teaching people from as early as now that your words matter to you. Like whatever I say to you about what I want in my space, what I don't want, just generally about life, doesn't even have to be about the baby. I call it training your crowd. You know, train the people in your space so that they accept your instructions without any, you know, they can accept it graciously without making you feel guilty, because that's a whole nother thing. And
Exactly.
especially in our culture, in my culture, I can't even imagine telling a cousin or an auntie, please don't come and see me. But I think that it
But
can be
that's it.
done.
People struggle with that. And I've had this
Mm.
conversation with women that I've been working with, and they're like, I can't say that. You know, I can't tell my sister-in-law that she can't come over with children. Like,
Exactly.
you can. You
Mm.
actually you can. It's your baby and it's your body,
Yeah.
and you can exactly say that to people.
Yeah.
Is if you don't want to say it to them face to face as well, you know, there's a template that I often share with people that's a text message that you can share and literally send it to all your friends and family and just say,
Yeah.
we are super excited to meet our baby. We know that you are too, but we're just giving you the heads up that the first couple of weeks we want to spend time bonding, getting to know with them, you know, getting to grips with breastfeeding, not having sleep, you know, all
Yeah.
recovering birth. And as soon as we're ready for you to meet the baby, we'll let you
Mm.
know.
Yeah.
Because, you know, having those text messages coming through going, congratulations, when can I come and meet him?
Yeah.
Is
But
hard.
you just
It's
have that as your, yeah, you, if you do that ahead of time, then at least everyone knows, and whoever gets upset, and that's life. Baby blues. That's another topic that we talk a lot in the shop, at the baby cut shop. We have moms who, you know, our clients come in when they find out they're pregnant, and then they come again when they find out what the baby's gender is. And once they do that, then we start preparing the nursery for them. And then many of them will come back after baby has been born to show us the baby, or maybe they decide they want the nursery done after baby arrives, and they pop in as well. But then we've
yeah,
had cases where people have talked about baby blues. I'm privileged in the sense that I have experience as a mom, but obviously my experience, even though I had 4 children and they all had very different births, it's still quite limited. It's not expert in that sense. So how do you deal with and encourage someone with baby blues?
you mean to, you know, to seek advice or?
Yeah, either seek advice, or say one of your clients has had a perfect birth up until that moment, and then in the fourth trimester, they just start to feel right. So maybe I should say, what are baby blues for starters?
Yeah,
We can
so
go to.
baby blues are a perfectly normal thing to happen.
Okay.
Often you do get a real crash of hormones. Day 5 is normally the worst day for mums. You
Mm.
real hormone crash after having your baby around day 5. And you know, I personally remember sitting crying at Pampers adverts on TV.
Wow.
It's a really hard day for lots of people.
Mm.
The thing to be very aware of, and I would say it's not even the mum's responsibility with this, it is their partners, it is their friends, it's their family talking to them, is to watch with how she's interacting, whether she is, you know, there's a difference of saying, I don't want you to come round, let me learn to be with the baby, to she's not responding to any of my messages, she's not showing me pictures of the baby, she's, you know, not being herself at all. Those first couple of weeks are hard, and it's got nothing to do with how the baby is born. You can have, you know, what is your ideal birth, and how you react to it postnatally has nothing really to do with it. Yes, it may be a fact that if you've had a traumatic birth, that has a knock-on effect postnatally, and there is a lot of unpicking for you to do from that, and, you know, really when you are ready, actually going back and looking at the trauma of that birth, especially before you go on to have another baby. But it's, you know, with mums feeling that overwhelmed, feeling sad, feeling blue, it's the understanding where the line is drawn a little bit on it, from what is normal, kind of hormonal, emotional, to actually, you know, I'm having thoughts about harming my baby, or to be here, or I can't hold my baby, or I don't want to feed my baby, or, you know, those kind of thoughts. And that's where, you know, partners really need to be educated, because more often than not, it's actually partners that will reach out to get support in those.
That makes sense. So is there like expected length of time that it would last, for example, or does it just vary completely from?
Completely varies. It completely varies on, you know, also, dare I say it, what type of baby you have as well. You know, if you do have a baby that, for example, has reflux, and you can't put them down for hours after they feed, you're constantly having to wind them, you're getting very little sleep, that's going to emotionally impact you on that. We are biologically made to survive on sleep when we've got a newborn, which is why when I'm with somebody overnight as a postnatal doula, I get more tired than the mum would have done over that night, because I haven't got those hormones in my body anymore.
Wow, interesting.
To be able to survive on that less sleep in that period, but it's going to take a toll. You know, sleep deprivation is a form of torture for a reason. So it is making time in, and again, I'm going back to the planning on your 4th trimester, that your priorities need to be taking care of you and baby, and that is your basic needs, your sleep, your eating. You know, you shouldn't be up doing washing, and there's, you know, there's all those memes that you see of people going, oh yeah, sleep when the baby sleeps, who's going to do the washing, who's going to do the cooking? Who cares who's doing the washing?
Yeah, least important thing. Yeah. I agree. I absolutely agree. So you mentioned that your pregnancies were pretty great. How did you find your 4th trimester? What was your experience?
So part of the reason that I'm so passionate about the 4th trimester is as I mentioned, with my first, was very much in the cultural kind of get out, show that you're fine, be superwoman. Second time around, again, very much, you know, probably respected it a little bit more. But when I say respected it a little bit more, I'm talking maybe 5 days in bed. And then I was up running around after my toddler, going out, doing things. It only took for me to have my 3rd baby for me to go, what the heck have I done before? That is it. I am not leaving my bedroom for a week. I am not doing things around the house. I'm going to really respect this. And you know, especially when you do have older siblings, you worry about the impact on them of you being born, and how they're going to adjust to it. And I can honestly say, hand on heart, they do adjust to it. If mummy isn't the one that's been taking them to school for a week, they're not going to remember it. And quite often, you know, if it's a case of having parents, in-laws, friends taking them, it's quite exciting for them actually to be around other people, and that baby. So for me personally, it took to my 3rd baby, and it was things like actually just respecting that 3rd trimester. I healed so much quicker from the birth. Breastfeeding was so much easier from that birth. The baby was so much more relaxed and calm and happy, because she spent the first 2 weeks of her life literally skin on skin with me. And it does have a huge impact from that. You know, it's shown in studies that mums actually having the baby on them and with them reduces your length of bleeding after birth and things like that as well. So, you know, the Mother Nature's not stupid. Done all of this stuff for a reason, and unfortunately we've just kind of got in a cultural norm of ignoring it a bit more. And you know, we're trying to get back there and kind of understand a little bit why these things happen and how they can actually, they're there to help us.
That's right. It's funny because I was thinking about my own experiences.
I was just about to ask you about that, how it progressed after your first one.
Yeah, so my first was, I mean, it was okay. I loved coming home and us having our family, but I think I was rather highly strung and just very worried about what I had done, bringing a whole life into the world. I remember we were sitting and waiting for a cab to come take us. My husband was there. He didn't drive in that day. And we were in the hospital waiting for a cab. We had called a cab to come in and take us.
Yeah.
And for the first time, because I had spent quite a long time in hospital, for the first time, I stepped outside in 5 days. And my lifestyle is I go out every single day. So steps outside in 5 days. Happened to be raining just a little bit. It wasn't heavy. But I looked at the mud on the ground, and there were these two ladies who were smoking, and it was outside, perfectly fine. And I've never had an issue with cigarette smoke in my life. As a matter of fact, I actually like the smell of cigarette. I'm not a smoker myself. Yeah. But that day, I just remember feeling, oh my goodness, my baby, who is so pure and so innocent and did nothing wrong to anyone, is going to come out into this dirty world where there is mud on the ground when it rains and people smoking and polluting the air. And so I had a really strange reaction, and I just had this need, very forceful, raging need to just be so protective over him, which is natural.
That's that protection, isn't it?
That protection just it really did. And for my husband, it was obviously new for him as well, but he has always been the most supportive man. I mean, it was like we were both pregnant together, so that was that. And then my second, I was bolder this time. My first one, I had family around and I regretted it. And so my second, I was bolder. I was like, no, we're not having any family around this time. So it wasn't as bad. But at the same time, it felt very much like a fantasy. I just had this feeling at the back of my mind that I'm going to go back into the real world and the real life and deal with life with two babies. And like you, one of my greatest fears was, I don't want my older son to feel like I've abandoned him. Yeah. And my thought was, the baby doesn't know any better. So I'll cuddle and be with the baby as much as I can. But whenever Aaron is near me, Aaron is going to come first. And so that was number 2. Number 3 was a lot better. It was a breeze. But I feel like yeah, there's something about the number 3. It was such a breeze. I had a wonderful time. I didn't feel any of the overwhelm or any of the stress that I did with the others. It was perfect. My third was literally perfect, and he was a perfect baby as well. And then my 4th son was born 5 years later. So the first 3 are quite close in age. They are first 1 and 2 are less than 2 years, and the next 2 are 2 years. So our number 4 came 5 years later, and he was a surprise baby. And it just so happened that we were going through a major, we were at a crossroads in our lives. We had just lost everything we owned in the recession. And I also found out I was pregnant about that time. So it was dealing with a whole lot of things that were not even baby related. And I remember with the other 3, I was a little bit late, although they went a little bit past their due dates. I think the second one didn't. But this time around, I kept saying, I need this child not to come yet. And I was actually 2 weeks overdue. And I wanted it that way because I felt like I was in such an uncertain place as a person that I wasn't going to cope well with having a new baby as well. And so finally he was born, and he was just such a source of joy to our household and has not stopped. And that was 14 years ago. So very, different fourth trimester experiences.
Yeah, and I think, you know, you sum it up perfectly with the more that you have, the more that you kind of realize, actually, this
Yeah,
time goes so quickly. It
yeah.
goes so fast. And
Mm.
what might feel like forever is those 2 weeks they're gone
They're
before you
gone.
even
Yeah, they're
realize
gone.
it's 3 months old and you go, where's
Hmm.
my newborn gone? Who is this
I know.
child that's
Yeah,
engaging and
yeah.
laughing and smiling, and you know, and you suddenly go, where's that little bundle gone? So
Hmm.
as much as it feels at the time when you're living in it
Yeah,
and you're in the trenches, in hindsight you kind of go, actually, you know, I'm glad that I gave it all to
yeah.
that baby, because once
Absolutely.
it's gone.
Absolutely. I mean, I breastfed my baby. I think Josh, my youngest, I breastfed him till he was nearly 3 years old. My husband was just like my mom. They were like, listen, he doesn't even want it. I'm like, I don't care. I'm gonna keep going. And I think it comes with age as well. The older you are, the more confident you are in the decisions you make. When you're young and I had my oldest, my firstborn when I was 26, I think. And so I'm there, and you're uncertain about life in itself, period. And then you're now having to deal with a new life. And so everyone else's advice just sound more confident than yours. But as you get older, it definitely gets better. And that's what I tell our moms at the shop as well, is just really encourage them. There is no right or wrong way to mother, because you were handpicked to be the mother of this baby, and just do you, and don't feel like you have to conform to trends or patterns or family or culture or what have you. So that's really good. What
Yeah.
products would you recommend? Are there any products that come to mind at all that you think would be wonderful for moms, just to make it a little bit easier and to help that transition into being a new mom?
Especially for subsequent babies, a sling. Sling,
Mm,
you honestly, like, I don't know what yours was like, but my number three basically spent the majority of her life in a on me, because we're running around after other kids,
oh
especially.
yes, yes.
Just having them there on you is really, really beneficial. So I think slings are very important.
Mm,
Um, anything that's going to help to make you comfortable,
yeah.
easier, you know, having the support of feeding pillows, pregnancy pillows, all
Yes, that's
that
right.
as well. Um, I don't know what you sort of find in the shop is what most people go for, but the ability to have your baby close to you
Yeah,
in something,
definitely.
whether
Yeah.
that is
So like a
emo-
Moses basket or a crib.
something like that as well.
I agree, absolutely. Sling wise, we in Africa, we actually tie up, which is where the sling comes from. We tie
Yeah,
our babies with a wrap to our backs in West Africa at
yeah.
least. And so my boys lived on my back with that wrap, and my youngest was addicted to it, to the point where as a toddler he'll find the wrap. We call them a wrapper, and he calls it, and he used to call it wap wap, and he'll say, "Mommy, wap wap," and I had to start hiding it, because once he saw it, he wanted to be on my back and tied to me. And it's a feeling that I miss even now, just having them that close to you. And but that's good to know. Those are helpful products. We
Yeah. What
always
do you
say,
find that most people sort of lean towards?
but so definitely what you said, a Moses basket or a crib, especially particularly cribs, because a crib allows you to have the baby in the room next to you for 6 months, which is so much easier for feeding at night and everything, and just your peace of mind that your baby is right next to you. And I know that you healthcare professionals do recommend that the baby stays in the same room as mom for the first 6 months.
Yeah.
And then nursing chairs, our chairs are also very much in demand. They are made to be used even before the baby is born, but they're the most comfortable nursing chairs you'll find, because they've been handmade and hand designed and evolved over the years. We've evolved and changed the design to adapt to moms, and so now we're at the place where it's perfect, and it's
Yeah.
comfortable. It swivels 360 degrees, and it also gives a gentle rocking motion, which allows moms to use it beyond just after having the baby, but even well into when your baby is a toddler, and then some people would move it to the living room afterwards. So yeah, but that's kind of what they mean. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think also we don't sell monitors, but I would imagine that that would be something you'd recommend, isn't it? Like a camera or a monitor to keep an
Yes.
eye on the baby.
Yeah, definitely. When your baby's in another room, having a monitor on them. There's lots of cameras now that you can have going via your phone.
That's right, yeah.
One monitor that lots of people talk about, which is an angel care monitor, which actually, has a pad that you put on the bottom of the baby's foot, regulating their heartbeat and stuff. I, maybe controversially, don't recommend those type of monitors. There's ones as well that you pop a pad onto them and it measures the baby's breathing.
Wow.
Unless you have an unwell baby and they need to know it, I would advise against those kind of monitors, just because you're so, I'm sure you understand that you're so on edge about the baby, especially with your first child. When you first, you spend your life going, are they still breathing?
Yeah. Are they still breathing? Yes.
They're normally woken up by now. Are they still alive? About it. And actually that technology just adds a level of stress for you.
I see.
The baby might have just shuffled a little bit and not be on the pad exactly, or the monitor, the bit on the bottom of their foot might have just come unstuck. And so you're panicking something that you don't need to be panicking about.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I can see me being in that gang of people who will panic even more because I have that sort of monitor. Because I would now be waiting for it to beep or whatever it is it does, and just say, okay, nothing has happened. And then if it's like you said, it slips off the baby's foot, and maybe that happens a couple of times a day, then when it doesn't slip off the baby's foot, then I worry that something has gone wrong. So I was going to ask you, why wouldn't you recommend that? But you've explained it perfectly well, and I hear you.
It's one of those oxymorons that is like, some technology is brilliant and it gives us so much more information. Yeah. Sometimes that information is a step too far. And I think you touched on it earlier about mums knowing, being the perfect mum. You're the perfect mum for your baby. And I always say to everyone, trust your gut. You will have so many people you contradicting information when you have that baby, that you have to take a step back and go, but what do I think as his mum? What do I think my child needs? And it's, just having that self-belief that that baby's been part of you for actually 10 months. By the time you have the baby, they have been part of you for 10 months. You know that baby better than anyone else in the world.
That's right.
This contradicting information that these poor mums nowadays, it's not even just that we're getting it from friends and family who very well, I can even say it from my own mother, not watching, gives you information, but it's outdated information. Is we know isn't correct anymore. So you've got taking on that. You're then taking on people that you've seen on Instagram telling you stuff about things that are all contradicting each other. So you've kind of got all this noise going on. Again, that's why planning for your fourth trimester is so important, because you kind of make a decision of what kind of parent you want to be before that baby even arrives. Whether you're going to be a very strict routine kind of mum, or whether you're going to be a follow the baby's circadian rhythm kind of mum. Just knowing which kind of people you trust and which advice you want to take, rather than being able to block out some of that noise.
Absolutely. I think I agree with you 100%. Blocking out noise is super important, because every single thing that you're hearing or watching or listening to becomes a thought. It's not just the moment that you read it. You're going to go away and it's going to keep playing on repeat, in your mind, and then you become uncertain. So the noise reduction is definitely a big one, and just trusting in yourself. And again, it sounds like a lot of the advice that you've given applies to humans, applies to women, period. And much of it we can use even when we're not expecting our babies, because I think that when you are pregnant, when you have your child, you're at the most primal states that you can be as a woman. And then bringing those things into play and importing those practices and adopting those practices, I should say, at that point when you're being so primal, I think practices that we can keep with us permanently, because it serves the core of who we are as people.
Yeah, absolutely. Completely.
Wow. We've got a few questions that have been sent over to us. And if you have just joined us, I am chatting with Jemma, and she is a doula. She's your antenatal everything. So just look at her as pre and post birth. She's your go-to person. And she's actually gonna be speaking at the Baby Cut Shop on the 24th of November. So Jemma, do you want to tell us a bit more about what that is, and then I'll do some questions, what
Yeah.
you're talking about.
So the lovely Tox has given me the opportunity to pop down to the store on the 24th of November. We're going to be hosting a very intimate, exclusive evening event there together, where I'm going to be talking in a lot more detail about the fourth trimester. So understand exactly what it is, how you can plan for it. And I've touched on during this conversation a bit about what to expect from normal newborn behaviour. And I'm really going to focus on that on the evening, about what to expect from your newborn, and how that you can work with them as well. And then I believe that we're going to have a nice intimate little chance for people to look around the shop, get some advice from your lovely assistants there as well. So it should be a really nice evening, of a nice, small group.
I'm looking forward to that, Jemma. I really am. It's going to be awesome. It's going to be really good. So make sure you mark your calendars. It's the 24th of November, and it's at 7:30 p.m. as well. So we've allowed a lot of time for you to, if you're working, get home from work, put the kids to sleep, and pop in. And our boutique is just such a cozy space. You wouldn't want to leave, I promise. So one question that came in is, how can I combat sleep deprivation? I think we got about 3 people send this in, actually.
So unfortunately, when you have a newborn, you don't really sleep very much. They not have any circadian rhythm. They do not understand the difference between night and day. Your baby's about a month old, they understand the difference between night and day. So it is very common for your baby to be up in the evening. Also, if you do have lots of people around during the day and you're passing that baby around, you might not be having that baby on you. You might not be feeding on demand as much as you would if your baby was lying on your chest. Lo and behold, you go to bed and you're cuddling your baby. So they want to feed on you. Next to you, and they can smell you and smell the milk, and they want to feed on you. So it's completely normal for things to be happening. With the sleep deprivation, it goes back to exactly what we were chatting about right at the beginning, about having that plan in place of that support network around you, whether that be friends and family, whether that is a postnatal doula or a maternity nurse, somebody that can come and actually take care of you.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I agree. The sleep one is, and it's only for a season as well. Remember, it's not going to go on and on and on. It is such a common question that we receive, and sometimes moms come in and they look like they haven't slept in days, and they say that's because I haven't actually slept in days. And there isn't much more you can do about it, but just be gracious to yourself. And you mentioned at the start, dirty dishes can wait. Don't worry about housekeeping or anything else. Just look after yourself as much as you can and catch up on sleep as much as humanly possible. But also remember that it's definitely going to pass. So,
as well, here is, I'm sure you probably get the same question from people that I get a lot of mums saying, I want to start pumping or expressing so that my partner baby, so that I can sleep. And I will talk a bit about breastfeeding on the evening on our event.
That's good.
About establishing breastfeeding, and it's not recommended that you pump until your baby's at least 5 or 6 weeks old.
Oh, really?
Because of that, and people worry about their partner being able to either take on a bit of feed,
feel part of the picture. And
I'm like, no, you feed the baby, then you hand the baby to the partner after bed. We go back to the sling conversation of, he can put the baby in a baby carrier and do the dishes while you sleep. While the baby's awake, while the baby needs burping, it's that's when your partner can look after them and you can go back to sleep then.
That's right. That's right. That's a good suggestion. Nutrition, are there any foods that you can suggest that will help raise energy levels during the day?
So there's lots. I'm not a nutritionist. I'm not an expert.
Mm,
So I would guide people towards lots of fabulous nutritionists that are out with
okay.
concrete. There is a brilliant book, which I'm looking at it on my bookshelf here, and it is 40 days, as we were talking about the 40 days, and it's
Ah,
days, which is brilliant. One thing to think about is you are going to be starving, especially if you're breastfeeding. So
mm,
do not just not deny yourself. Again, it's back to that horrible cultural thing of people expecting to bounce back after they've had their baby and worrying about their weight and worrying about what they're eating. That fourth trimester, think of it like you're still pregnant.
yes, I love that.
If you are tired and you want a cereal bar, I'm always like, have a load of water, have a load of cereal bars. You know, best present a friend could bring around is a box of brownies.
Mm,
You know, you think of that time as you are still bonding in with your baby. You have got months and months and months to worry about getting back into shape. So it's more of a case of eat what you need to when you need to.
that's right. Okay, sounds good. That's helpful enough. We just needed to have an idea, but I love what you said. Eat what you think about it. Getting a low battery notification here is think about it as though you're still pregnant. I love that advice, and I love that it's called the fourth trimester, so that it's not after you've had the baby and life just carries on, because it defines a period, in a recovery period and a bonding period for you and your little one. And so we've just got time for one more question, if we can squeeze that in. And I almost feel like I know what you're going to say, but creating more balance. Do you have any suggestions on how this person can create more balance in her life?
So when you've got that newborn, it is all encompassing, but you do still need to make time for yourself as well. And, you know, that's where having help and support really comes into play. Taking that time that when the baby is asleep, not going, oh, I've got to go and hoover the house now quickly. Going, actually, I'm going to go run myself a bath and relax and read a book and chill out, and prioritizing yourself above other things. And you know, as we've discussed about prioritizing and worrying about other people and what they need, these 12 weeks are a time where it really is all about you.
That's
So each permission to be as selfish as you want to. Take, you know, going out for a daily walk, having that fresh air, popping your baby in the buggy, and lots of, I'm sure you probably get this with mums that sort of walk to the shop as well, that they're like, just put the baby in the buggy and I just walk.
I just came out, yep.
Felt amazing. The coffee in my hand felt amazing.
Yes.
Having to speak to anyone felt amazing.
Honestly.
Get out about. If you want to start doing some light exercises and stuff after 6 weeks, you know, if you want to go to a Pilates class, things like that, do what helps you to create.
Love that. Love that. Really helpful. Thank you so much, Jemma. This has been packed with so much gems. Really, really appreciate you taking the time out. So can you tell us where we can find you?
So you can find all the information about me on stilettostostrollers.com, on strollers on here on Instagram as well. I think we will both be sharing a link for people to be able to book their event.
That's right.
As we said, they are super limited. So if you would like to learn more about the fourth trimester, make sure you book your ticket pronto and nab that space to come and learn a bit more about it.
Sounds awesome. And if you only just joined in, because I can see a few people have just joined, or you are you joined in halfway, don't worry. The replay is going to be on both Gemma's and our Baby Cut Shop's Instagram profile or feed rather, so you can watch the whole thing again. But thank you so much, Jemma. Thanks everyone for joining in. Thank you for the questions. Thank you for really being helpful and so generous with your knowledge and with your information. We really appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Have a good one.
Bye.
Bye.